You feel tired, but not physically. It's not your body. It's your mind, your attention, your boundaries. You're drained, and you can't even explain why. You wake up tired. You go to bed with conversations replaying in your head. You smile in rooms that make you tense. You respond to messages you didn't want to open. You listen to people who never ask how you're doing. And slowly, you fade, not loudly, not dramatically, but piece by piece, until the silence inside you feels more like absence than peace. Carl Jung called this psychic energy, not metaphorical, not poetic, but real measurable life force. And like any energy, it can be spent, used, drained, wasted, or preserved. But most people don't preserve it. They leak through guilt, through over-explaining, through trying to fix what isn't theirs, through speaking when silence would have protected them. You're not exhausted because you do too much. You're exhausted because you feel too much, for the wrong people in the wrong rooms at the wrong time. And the world rewards that. It praises the open-hearted, the strong listeners, the always available, but it never asks, what does it cost you to be this open? Jung believed that the human psyche operates on energy balance. Every thought, every emotion, every interaction has a price. And when you keep paying it, without return, without rest, without boundaries, you go into energetic debt. You start borrowing against your future peace just to survive the present. You stay in conversations you should have ended. You answer calls that should have gone to silence. You tolerate disrespect because you're afraid of seeming rude. And every time you do, you give away energy that was never meant to be shared. Jung didn't just talk about trauma or dreams. He talked about psychic structure, the architecture of your soul, the inner walls, the sacred center, and how, if you don't protect it, the world will build a city on top of you. You're not obligated to be reachable. You're not responsible for every question. You don't have to respond immediately or explain endlessly or justify your silence. Sometimes silence is the boundary, and yet we're afraid of it, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of being seen as cold, afraid of the quiet that forces others to face their own chaos. But that fear is exactly what's keeping you tired, because silence is not absence, it's presence. With a closed door, you don't need to yell, you don't need to argue, you don't need to correct the lies. You need to stop giving your energy to people who use it as fuel for their own dysfunction. Jung said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. So they provoke you, distract you, argue with you, use you as a way to avoid themselves. And every time you react, you become part of their escape. But when you go quiet, when you stop feeding the dynamic, when you no longer respond the way they expect, something breaks, not in you, in them. Because now they're alone with the very thoughts they tried to drown out by draining you. Silence isn't passive. It's active protection. It's refusal. It's sovereignty. It's a wall, built not from anger, but from self-respect. You've been taught to explain, to comfort, to ease other people's discomfort, even if it shatters your own. But Jung's work points to a deeper truth. The unconscious needs space to heal, and space cannot exist in a life filled with noise. If you want to think clearly, you must stop oversharing. If you want to protect your energy, you must stop broadcasting your emotional weather to anyone who looks curious. If you want peace, you must choose silence over performance, because what they call cold is often just what stability looks like to the emotionally chaotic. Let them be confused. Let them question. Let them wonder. Your boundary is not cruelty. It's containment. It's the line that says, this is as far as you can come. Beyond this, it's mine. Not every loss is visible. Some are silent, internal, slow. You don't notice it at first. You just feel off, unmotivated, easily irritated, drained without a clear reason. And so you blame the schedule, the job, the world, but the real leak is often closer, quieter. It's inside. Carl Jung believed that most people aren't tired because of what they do, but because of what they allow, what they carry, what they react to, what they replay in their minds. Long after the moment has passed, you leak energy. When you over-engage, you don't need to be in every conversation. You don't need to answer every accusation. You don't need to heal every person who touches your life. But you do, because somewhere deep down, you were trained to believe that being available equals being worthy. And that's the lie. Jung wrote, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents." That burden, it often becomes your pattern. You become the listener, the fixer, the over-explainer, the emotional container. You become the one who absorbs tension just to keep others calm. And every time you do, a little more of your energy escapes, not because you're weak, but because no one ever taught you how to protect your center. So instead of setting boundaries, you build personas, masks, versions of you, designed to please, to soften, to make things easier. And masks require constant energy to maintain. The moment you step into a room and play a role, you start leaking, because now you're not operating from your core. You're performing, and performance is exhausting. You leak energy. When you explain what doesn't need to be explained, when you justify a number that should have been silent, when you give people answers just to make them stop questioning. But here's what Jung teaches us. That which we do not bring to consciousness appears in our lives as fate. Meaning, if you don't learn to recognize the patterns, they will keep repeating under different names. The toxic friend becomes a new coworker. The controlling partner becomes a new stranger. The same emotional drain shows up in a new disguise. And you ask, why does this keep happening? But the real question is, where am I still bleeding without even knowing it? Every time you react without reflection, you give away your power. Every time you defend your truth to someone who never earned it, you lose energy. Every time you try to make others feel okay, by sacrificing your clarity, you shrink. The leakage doesn't happen in big moments. It happens in the small ones. The forced smiles, the immediate replies, the conversations you didn't want to have, the invitations you accepted, even though your body said no. This is psychic erosion, and it's slow enough that you don't notice it until your silence starts feeling like absence again. So what do? Jung would say, you go inward. You ask, what am I really trying to prove? When I always say yes, what fear keeps me reacting instead of observing? What version of me shows up when I don't feel safe to be real? Because awareness is the start of repair. You can't protect energy. You don't know you're leaking. You can't set boundaries around patterns you refuse to name. And you can't restore peace while still giving people free access to your emotional wiring. That's why silence isn't just a pause. It's a pattern interrupt. It's a reset, a message to yourself. I'm no longer outsourcing my power to the reactions of others. You want to protect your energy? Here's how. Stop defending what doesn't need defense. Stop reacting to bait. Stop explaining your evolution to people committed to misunderstanding you. And most of all, stop mistaking emotional availability for emotional health. They're not the same. You don't owe your soul to everyone who asks nicely. You don't owe your past self the prison of people-pleasing. You only owe your current self one thing: protection. Jung didn't believe in hiding. He believed in confronting. He believed that real strength comes from integration, from seeing your patterns and choosing differently. And sometimes that choice begins with silence. Some boundaries don't need to be spoken. They're felt in the silence between replies, in the pause before you respond, in the space you no longer fill just to keep others comfortable. Carl Jung believed that boundaries aren't walls. They're definitions. They don't shut people out. They reveal who belongs inside. And sometimes the clearest boundary is silence. Not because you're hiding, but because words have failed. And now, your absence will say what your presence never could. You've probably noticed this. When you go quiet, people panic. They ask, "What's wrong? Are you okay? Why are you being distant?" But you're not being distant. You're being centered. You're no longer stretching yourself to make others feel secure in their own chaos. Silence isn't avoidance, it's realignment. It says, I no longer play games with people who don't respect clarity. I don't need to explain why this feels wrong. My peace matters more than your comfort. Manipulators hate silence because silence removes the script. They don't know what role to play. When you no longer react, they can't provoke, can't guilt, can't control the narrative. Your lack of engagement becomes their crisis. And that's exactly the point. Jung taught that the unconscious mind thrives on patterns. And when you break those patterns by not responding the way you used to, you disrupt the entire system. Silence is disruption. It's evolution. It's the shift from being available to being sovereign. You don't need to announce your boundaries. You don't need to defend them. You just need to hold them quietly, calmly, unapologetically, and let the silence do the heavy lifting. Because people who truly see you don't need constant access. They respect your distance. They read between the lines. They don't punish your silence. They protect it. The rest, let them fall away. Jung said, loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. That's why you went quiet, not because you're cold, but because you were tired of translating your soul into a language no one was listening to. You wanted connection. They wanted performance. You offered presence. They demanded entertainment. You shared truth. They replied with resistance. So now you speak less, not because you have less to say, but because you've realized not everyone deserves access to your frequency. That silence, it's not passive, it's filtration. It lets people show you how much noise they require to feel okay. It shows you who respects quiet and who needs chaos to survive. And from there, you decide. Silence is not revenge. It's not withdrawal. It's refusal. Refusal to over-explain. Refusal to perform. Refusal to beg for space you already own. You're not angry. You're aligned. You're not cold. You're conserving. You're not disconnected. You're just done. Giving away energy to those who treat it like it's infinite. This kind of silence, it has gravity. When you enter a room, you don't need to speak. Your presence speaks for you because people know you don't waste words. You don't fake warmth. You don't soften the truth. And that is how you become respected without ever raising your voice. Your silence isn't a punishment. It's a boundary. It's the sacred pause between stimulus and response that says, I choose peace over reaction. And slowly, your life begins to shift. The people who need constant access fall away. The ones who feed on your openness find another host, and in that vacuum, you find clarity. Who am I when I'm no longer defined by what I give away? That's when you realize silence isn't emptiness. It's refinement. It's what remains after everything unnecessary has been removed, and what's left is powerful. You were never weak. You were never too emotional. You were just too open. In a world that doesn't know what to do, with open souls, you let everyone in. You gave too much. You explained too often. You stayed too long. And all it gave you was exhaustion. Carl Jung wouldn't have told you to toughen up. He would have told you to pull inward, to close the gates, to restore the center, because your energy was never meant to be public property. Now you know, not everything deserves your attention. Not everyone deserves your truth. Not every silence needs to be filled. Some silences are boundaries. Some silences are healing. Some silences our power. And when you choose silence, you choose yourself. You stop proving. You stop defending. You stop explaining to people who've already made up their minds. You don't speak to be understood anymore. You speak when it matters, and the rest, you let it dissolve into quiet. This isn't a loss. It's not loneliness. It's not withdrawal. It's alignment. You're not missing out. You're just no longer leaking out. You're not alone. You're just finally at peace. So if this message found you at the edge of burnout, if you felt unseen, unheard, overexposed, and underrespected, know this: you're not broken. You're just learning how to protect your energy. For the first time in your life, share this video with someone who's always exhausted but doesn't yet understand why. They don't need motivation. They need silence. Comment below, "I protect my peace with silence." Let it be your quiet declaration. And when you're ready for more, for depth, for clarity, for sovereignty, the journey continues in the next video.